Welcome to Haunted America, the podcast where we pull at the threads of old stories until the past starts to move. I'm your host, and tonight we're stepping off the blacktop of US 61, cross a wide, quiet lawn draped in live oaks, and stand on the long wraparound veranda of a house that calls itself both beautiful and troubled, the Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. On the surface, it's a textbook Southern landmark. Doric porch columns, a long veranda lined with rocking chairs, but for nearly 2 centuries, whispers have circled this house. Whispers about those who have lived and died here, about accidents and tragedies, voices in the night and faces in mirrors. Some of those whispers became postcards, some bedtime stories. Some, whether you believe them or not, have been captured on film and in dozens of eyewitness accounts. And this is what keeps the plantation on the list of America's most haunted houses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Haunted America. Tonight we are covering the Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana. This episode will weave 3 threads: the documented history, the who and when, and the famous hauntings and the stories that anchor them. The ways that the Myrtles legends have been shaped, amplified, and sometimes contested over time. Along the way, I'll read reported accounts, describe photos that visitors and owners have shown the public, and note where historians and skeptics raise questions. If you're listening with the lights off, well, that's exactly where these stories do their work. The house that is now called the Myrtles was first built in 1796 on land originally known as Laurel Grove. It sits on a rise above the Mississippi corridor and began as part of a much larger plantation. Over the next century, it changed hands, expanded architecturally, and endured the usual Southern arc of prosperity, disease, and war. The building you see today reflects renovations and additions made through the 19th century. Dormers, a long porch, and interior details like hand-painted transoms and plasterwork that draw visitors. The property was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1978. Like many plantations, the Myrtles' history is complicated. It was worked by enslaved people, and stories about some of those lives. The names, the labors, the violence, do not always appear in the flowery tourism language. The site's modern operators present both historical preservation side of the house and the folklore side. The haunted tours that draw thousands each year. That dual identity is part of the story. The house is a haunted attraction, and the house is a material artifact of American history. If there is a single figure the public remembers from the Myrtles, it's Chloe, a name that appears on every haunted house brochure, in gift shop postcards, and in dozens of web pages. The Chloe story exists in several versions, but the common thread goes like this. Chloe was an enslaved woman who worked either as a house slave or as a cook. In one telling, she baked a birthday cake for the Woodruff family. That was the family that then owned the house, and laced it with oleander leaves, either intending to poison the mistress and her children, or to make them ill so she could tend to them and demonstrate her worth. In that version, several people died from the poisoning. In other versions, Chloe acted out of revenge after being punished, and the tragedy was deliberate. The legends say Chloe was then hanged or otherwise executed, and that she now returns in a green turban wandering the grounds, or appearing in photographs as a cloudy figure. One widely circulated postcard shows a faint figure between 2 buildings. The image is used in many books and sites about the house. Alright, before we dive back into tonight's haunted tale, I've got to tell you something that actually keeps me going through all these late night investigations, and that's Dubby Energy. Look, when you're up at 2 a.m. reviewing EVP recordings or scrolling through ghost footage, the last thing you need is a sugar crash or shaky hands. Dubby gives you clean, focused energy No jitters, no crash, and definitely no creepy side effects. It's packed with natural caffeine, vitamins, and nootropics. Everything you need to stay alert when the shadows start to move. And if you want to try it yourself, here's a little treat, or maybe a trick. Head to w.gg, use the code HAUNT10 at checkout to save 10% on your order. That's HAUNT10 to get 10% off and keep your energy level higher than your EMF readings. W Energy, fuel your focus, and maybe your next ghost hunt. It's important to note that historians who have researched the plantation have pointed out problems in the tale. Records don't clearly support the version in which Chloe murdered family members via cake. Some critical researchers describe the Chloe story as folklore that evolved during the 20th century, mingling elements of real tragedy with myth. That doesn't stop the story from persisting, though, especially since photographs and postcards have been circulated as evidence. And several guests and staff have reported seeing a woman in that time period of dress. But when we say documented, we should be careful. Documented in folklore and repeated eyewitness accounts, yes. Documented as undisputed historical fact, not necessarily. Another story tied to the house involves a man named William Drew Winter. According to the popular account, Winter was shot on the front steps in 1871 by an unknown assailant. Bleeding, he staggered or crawled upstairs and collapsed on the 17th step, dying in the arms of his wife. Guests and staff for decades have reported footsteps on the stairs, or the sound of someone struggling and stopping at that 17th step. The 17th step story is one of those vivid images, a specific, repeatable detail that makes the tale memorable. But again, researchers have noted variations in the reporting of his name, of the date, and of the exact sequence of events. While a shooting did occur in the house's history, versions of the story have diverged in ways that complicate verification. There are other persistent motives. A mirror that is said to hold the spirit of Sarah Woodruff and her 2 children. The mirror allegedly wasn't covered after their deaths and is said to occasionally show handprints or faces. Reports of a small girl who suddenly died in the 1860s and sometimes appears in one bedroom, and stories of a woman practicing voodoo who lived and died on the grounds. These are the kinds of legends that grow. A mirror, a child, a single, repeated image. All the ingredients of a classic haunted house lore. Haunted houses live in photographs as much as in testimony. The Myrtles sells postcards that include archival or owner-supplied photos, some showing what is claimed to be a hazy female figure on a porch or a ghostly face in a mirror. These images fuel curiosity and, for many visitors, transform an evening tour into a quest. Can I capture Chloe on film? Will the camera pick up orbs or mists? National Geographic and several travel magazines have profiled the Myrtles over the years, blending history and legend, which pushes the site into the national conversation about haunted tourism. That attention has made the plantation a reliable stop on lists of the most haunted places in the South, a reputation that helps keep tours full and rooms booked. But it also raises an ethical question. When does storytelling about pain and death become spectacle? And how do caretakers balance preservation of the historical record with the entertainment value of ghost stories? Let me read a few short reported encounters, phrased carefully as reported, so you can hear what people say they've experienced. I woke in the night and saw a woman at the foot of the bed. She looked right at me and then vanished. I had never seen such a face, not in any portrait. She wore a green headscarf. Reported sightings of a woman in green turban match the Chloe legend. Similar descriptions have come from multiple guests and staff over the decades. Whether those descriptions are drawn from expectation, from reading the brochures before the stay, or from genuinely independent experiences is something skeptics debate. We were walking past the stairs when my friend said he felt like something was pushing him back. He looked down, and there were wet footprints leading up to the 17th step, and then nothing. Stories like that, tactile, sensory, and specific, have a different weight than an ambiguous photo. But they're also exactly the kind of anecdote that can spread quickly among tour groups. Eyewitness testimony is powerful material for folklore, and it's also why the Myrtles, like many haunted sites, exist in a space where history, spectacle, and personal meaning overlap. Every haunted house story invites a counterpoint. Joe Nickel and other skeptics have traced the Chloe story and other legends to the late 20th century interpretations, postcards, and promotional materials. Photographs can be double exposed, misread, or enhanced by imagination. Mirrors can show reflections and imperfections that can be mistaken for faces in low light. Old houses creak, settle, and make noises that, in an inspectant ear, become footsteps or whispers. That doesn't make the experience any less real to the people who report them. It just widens the interpretive frame. What's valuable is holding both responses at once: the documented social history, the facts we can verify in archives, land deeds, and family records, and the folklore history, the stories that communities tell, retell, and adapt. Both are part of the Myrtles' living narrative. Today, the Myrtles operates as a historic house museum, bed and breakfast, and tour site. Guests can still book rooms that are said to be active, and the plantation offers daytime historical tours as well as evening mystery or ghost tours. The staff balances hospitality with preservation, maintaining the house's fabric while continuing to welcome curious visitors who want to walk the grounds, take photographs, and listen to the porch creak under the slow swing of the humidity. There's a broader thing that Myrtles asks us to consider: how we carry the past forward. A plantation house is an artifact of architecture and power. It's also a container for stories, true, rumored, invented, and remembered. When we talk about hauntings, we're also talking about memory, how a place remembers the people who live there, and how we remember those people back. If you'd like to dig deeper, I'll put links to the Myrtles' official history page and a few critical articles in the episode notes. If you plan to visit, consider both tours, the daytime history tour and the evening storyteller tour, so you get both sides of the story. A quick note for the listeners: we've included descriptions of death and references to historic violence in this episode. If any of those subjects are difficult for you, please take care of yourself and skip this episode if you need to. I'm going to have that in the description. I should have read that earlier here before. I know talking about plantations can be hard for some, but it is part of our history, and it's a historical haunted site. But thank you guys for walking the veranda with me tonight. Next week, we'll travel to another old house. Who knows? Who knows where? Maybe, you know what? Maybe not an old house. Maybe... I don't know. I'm going to Vegas here. Actually, when this episode comes out, I will be in Vegas. I'm going off script here a little bit. Yeah, when this episode comes out, I'll be in Vegas already. Let's see. We'll cover the Devil's Rocking Chair next week. That's what we'll do, because I'm going to go see that when I'm in Vegas at Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum. So that'll be next week's episode. Thank you guys for joining me. If you have any recommendations of like haunted artifacts or haunted places to cover in future episodes, or you yourself have a story that you want to share with the podcast, you can do so by emailing me at hauntedamericapodcast@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, get a hold of us however you guys can. Till next time, keep the lights on.